Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
She would hold me when she could, my focus distracted. I had my art in my words, self-contained. She couldn't understand that life was all I needed. I shared what I could. It wasn't enough, and I knew. It's always that way. My coming and going, muse-led. Steady whispers taunt me of freedom, and well, I'm always readily persuaded. I hope she is nowhere, suffering tears, beating herself up over what may have gone wrong. Some are appeased only by the blackest silence of night and the solitude that accompanies artistic endeavors. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Studio B on Revolution Radio here at freedomslips.com, and I thank you for taking the time to join me over the course of the next couple hours. I'm going to share on this broadcast information and certain news stories that are connected to the presence of the Dragon Lords, or the what people know of as the Anunnaki, or the Seraphim angels, what the Bible refers to as the Nakash of Genesis chapter 3, of which in the Bible it shows the depiction, the garden parable, is metaphoric for the beguilement of our maternal mother, Eve, by what was a shining one, an enchanter, a magician, and that the seduction that took place to cause our ancestors to fall from paradise, where they were eventually exiled here to this planet, the earth that we now find ourselves present upon, that this was a place that was already inhabited by the Nakash, the shining ones, the dragons of old, that ancient dragon, that old serpent, the devil and Satan, who deceiveth the whole world. And so I'm going to share some, what I consider to be some really interesting information. Welcome Simply Red and Sack and Bernard, Wolfman, Monkey, and all the others, Mr. Rowe and Zippy and Delta, Tracy and Doc Who, and all the rest of you that are in the chat room. Jer Bear's with me this evening too. He's going to just stay for a little bit. I'm just trying to make sure that we have the whole, as far as the call-in system, that I've got all that nailed down, so that we can start accepting and taking calls and sharing interaction and fellowship and dialogue with those of you that have been longtime listeners, and also for those of you that are just now discovering this show and the things that we cover, that there's a welcome Noodles. There's a lot of very well researched and very knowledgeable individuals that are frequent listeners to not only this program but to the other hosts. And so I think it would be absolutely relevant and important to have your voices as part of the program and to give you chance for commentary and to share the insight that you may be privy to, whichever part of the world you are from, and that this is some of the most interesting information, and that um, a lot of people are being led to research along these lines and that are new to this information, but that many of you, especially those that have been longtime listeners, because I cover this topic often in the work that I do with scripture and on the prior times, and in tangent with the fallen angels and also their giant children and all of that, because this is absolutely biblical. It mentions the Nakash, the seraphim angels, which, if you don't know, Sarah and Rephaim, Sarah is in reference to snake or serpent, and Rephaim to giant and fallen ones. And so the seraphim angels are dragon like angels. And that's also why you have mentioned in the scriptures the flying fiery serpents and the cockatrice, which is a feathered serpent. And so all of these things are connected to what we're going to be talking about and covering. So let me just make sure. Jared, whenever you're ready, brother, we can test out that. Just make sure that comes clear. And then I'll go ahead and continue with the show. And you let me know when you're ready. But um, anyways, so I wanted to definitely, there's some things that have come to light from certain whistleblowers that have helped us to gain insight, especially over the most recent years, to gain insight into this whole, what seems to be just profoundly ludicrous and, um, you know, far reaches, far edges as far as lunatic fringe. And that does not seem to have any bearing, any kind of relevance to what we're dealing with as a world. When you consider that, most people believe that we are evolved of apes and that everything came into being out of random chaos, and that, all of this was per chance, and that nothing, that, that there was no, there's no bearing as far as conspiracy theories. There's no realities to them. There's, even with the whole, now that we're all faced with even all the sci-fi movies and all the Hollywood rhetoric on ancient aliens and, Star Trek, Star Wars, these kind of things, which have been largely held as fanciful or fantasy, or even with the, fairy tale. But we have now the Ancient Aliens History Channel, the Discovery Channels, and all of these different programs, even some of the more mainstream networks, presenting shows which are looking into, studying into the ancient mysteries of not only the earth, but looking into some of the connections to anomalous objects on not only the moon and Mars, but there are other places and other things being cited. Like we had, I believe it was Neil Armstrong that made a mention of the monolith on one of the moons of Mars, Phobos, and how there were other. Okay, Gerber, if you can hear me, whenever you want to, we can test the system, and then we'll be good to go, brother. And then when I decide to take phone calls, I'll open up, and then I'll be able to, to maneuver all that, and then we can make that part of the program, because I do really respect the listening audience and the wisdom that a lot of the people hold. And I think it would be of great benefit to the listening audience and to those that are especially new listeners to gain insight. Okay, no problem, Jer. To gain insight into the knowledge that is available from all of these very well-researched individuals. Anyways, and so there are a couple things that I have covered in shows in the distant past, but that it will be all relevant to some of the information that I'm going to be talking about tonight. Okay, I've got the number. Thank you. And so I know that Olive wanted to call in last week, and I did not have a chance to learn all that when I was actually producing shows, so I didn't have that part nailed down. So if you had called in during the show previously, I didn't even know. And so know that I was not trying to ignore you, and that I really do appreciate the interaction that you're trying to share with me. And I thank all of you for trying to share insight, because, I think again that you're very wise individuals, and that we're all learning from each other. I don't have all the answers. Of course, none of us do. And that, we all have certain pieces of the puzzle, and that if we can share dialogue with one another and fellowship with each other, that we can in that way work together to formulate and to bring to light the underlying truth that connects all of these different, what seem to be disjointed pieces of the puzzle. And that in doing so, we can also encourage and pique the interest of individuals that are new to this kind of research, that are just now starting to introspect in this way into the esoteric aspects of what we are dealing with as a world. And that there are many, many individuals that are brought to such study, and that are brought to such insight by having personal experiences of a nature which they can't really explain. And what I'm talking about specifically is the phenomena that we know as alien abduction, which, in my opinion, is the same thing as what is revealed in the Bible in Genesis chapter 6, with the sons of God taking wives from the daughters of man, of all whom they chose. Because it doesn't ever reference that these women chose them to take on as mates, and that, basically it was more like an abduction phenomenon that we see in the mythologies, especially the pagan, the Greek and the Roman, the mythologies which speak about the gods, so-called gods, which we know are the fallen angels and the rebel angels, and including the the Watcher angels that were the second incursion of the 200 that fell during the time of Yared, Enoch's father, that is referenced and written about in the book of Enoch in great detail, that that this kind of thing has been going on for a very, very long time. And that even in the Sumerian text, it speaks about the same thing of the gods coming down and either taking, seducing, much like Eve was beguiled and seduced and impregnated with Cain, that these shining ones, these rebel angels, that they can take even the form of beautiful animals in order to lure, to bring their prey into close proximity, and that once they are within reach, they will snatch them and take off to whatever place, or that they will perform the act there upon the spot, and then they would leave the individual. We also have the story of Hades or Pluto with the abduction of Persephone, and how she was taken down into the, into the bowels of the earth, down into the deep underground, into the hollow earth, and that she was held there until an arrangement was made that she would be allowed to come to the surface of the earth for a certain period of time of every year. And so there is relevance to this mythology, to these kind of stories, which we don't understand. And that if we begin to look into the mythology and begin to study into the deeper aspects of how these things became religion, and how there have been these belief systems shared by, even the native peoples worldwide, that also correlate to the mythologies that are written down by different individuals, such as, we have the stories of Homer and other Greek philosophers and poets, and those that were the greatest of storytellers, even Plato and different individuals. No, not Zen Gardner. This is Zen Garcia, SG. My last name is Garcia, just so you know. But anyways, and so when we really start to connect all these dots, then it presents to us a bigger picture, especially when you take into account the stories of the elites and their worship of the feathered serpents, and also the insight of these whistleblowers, these insiders like Arizona Wilder, and even with Princess Diana, individuals of, that kind of deep Illuminati connection, John Todd and others, that this information is very profound, very deep, and that it connects to things that we don't understand, and that are just now coming to light. And that once we can understand it in this way, we can really, really make sense of the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places, as it references in the Bible, and that in that the reality of what we are dealing with as a world really begins to make sense in a way that it otherwise might never have. And so that's why I think it's important to do this kind of research and to study into um, into the the stories that are long forgotten, the forbidden, and how it's important to really look into what the native peoples hold as relevant and as part of their belief systems. The whole thing with the star people and all of that has been largely um, ignored by so many, by the mainstream um, archaeologists and scientists and those that don't believe that there is any relevance uh, to their particular oral traditions. But now that we are in the last generation, that we're at the end of days, and that we're the fig tree generation, that the Spirit is being poured out on all flesh, that to me, the Most High is bringing out revelations from all traditions, all peoples, all cultures, all civilizations, not just the Western industrialized nations, or not just as far as not just Christianity per se, as far as religious truth. No, there are truths coming out from all of the different peoples and bodies of wisdom and knowledge worldwide, that you have to be able to unify all these things in order to understand, I believe, the larger picture of what we are dealing with as world. And so when we come back from the first break, we'll talk about this, and I'll actually go into um, some of the information, some of these articles in connection. I'm sorry, everybody. I was just trying to make sure that I was still on with that I was still connected to the studio, and I am. And so, yeah, sure, no problem at all, Gerber. After the break, that's fine. Okay, and so all these whistleblowers, these insiders from the Illuminati family, people like Carolyn Hamlet, John Todd, um, there are Savali and Arizona Wilder. There's Catherine Fitzgerald, who was the best friend for Princess Diana. All of their testimonies are so profound and so just weird when it comes to those that have never heard about or studied any of this information. It just seems just too bizarre. And that those, like people, anybody that was just off of the street, that had never looked into or ever began researching the deeper aspects of what we're dealing with as the New World Order, and also to the Black Op programs, to the things like the Dogon people with the Nomo, or the Draconians, or ancient aliens, or anything of that nature. How it's so bizarre that if you were to mention any kind of, even just a small portion of this information to anybody that's quote unquote normal, they would look at you as if you had two heads, or that that you needed to be locked up and heavily medicated. I mean, that's just how bizarre the information is. But again, when we look at the overall underlying truth that connects all the aspects of mythology with the gospel, religious truths, to the ancient alien phenomena, to alien abductions, to deep underground bases, to the hollow earth, to interdimensional beings, to the emerald tablets of Thoth, and the mention of the Atlanteans, and uh, to the whole thing with the primitive, what the Sumerian text called the primitive worker and civilized man, to modern humanity, to the pre-Adamic times, Atlantis, as mythology, all of that, to the way stations that are mentioned in Sumerian mythology. The only thing that ties all of this together is the fact that there is a presence that is very ancient and that has been here in this solar system for a lot longer than we as modern humanity has. And that this particular being, these particular beings had a great part to play in the evolution of humanity and in the interaction of the so-called gods, these pagan idolatrous beings, to um, to the ancient mysteries, to the connections with the worship of the feathered serpent, the dragons, the depictions of the Anunnaki as feathered serpent, ancient um, alien, half reptilian, half these reptilian beings with wings. The same thing that the Nakash of Genesis chapter 3 is cited as being. All of that is relevant for that. All right. When we get back, we'll get into it. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I do have an announcement that I need to make for those of you that are interested in specific hosts, that the archive CDs are now created, and that if you have for those that want to support the network, that you can purchase a CD of your favorite hosts, all of the shows that they have done going back from December 31st back to January at the beginning of the year. And that um, let if you go ahead and let Nighthawk know that you're interested, just contact him. You can go to the contact us at freedomslips.com and just let him know that you're interested in purchasing and supporting the network in that way, whatever host, and he'll get down your information and go ahead and send that out to you. And so just wanted to let everybody know that, and we appreciate all of your help. So, all right, let me try this real quick, and then we'll move in with the news feeds, because I got a lot of really interesting information, and the way that I'm going to tie it all together here with you will give insight to those of you that are new to what it is that I'm talking about. And I've gone so far down the rabbit hole that when I post this kind of stuff, already, most of my friends and my family members, and especially my older friends, they already think I'm nuts. So I can post this kind of stuff on Facebook without really um, phasing those that have studied, that have looked into this kind of information. And so, all right, I'm looking to see. I want to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong.
Sam, this is Chair.
Hey, Jer.
Yeah, it rang and then it stopped and didn't give me a excuse me. It didn't give me a message or anything. So let me give let me give Nighthawk a shout. You please continue. This is real good. And while I'm here, one question about about Mrs. Arizona Wilder. Now, I watched her with the blonde-haired dude.
David Icke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the way she brought her herself on, the way she was talking and looking distressed and stuff, explaining about Princess D and the boyfriend's father back in the 80s was going to the castle in that they would go to the castle in Scotland.
Yeah.
And have these rituals where they did they became reptilians. Now she seems like it's, to me, I'm naive, so I kind of take on it that it sounds like she knew what she was talking about, how she related with the boyfriend and the father back in the 80s before the incident, kind of knew that this was going to happen. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, she sounded sincere to me as well. And the other thing about it is, why would anybody go public with that kind of information? I mean, she was a school teacher on the side, and how would that help her in any other way than them wanting to lock her up? Because even with me talking about the stuff that I talk about now, why would any of us talk about this kind of stuff if we did not come to understand it as truth? And in her case, she was part of these rituals where she was witness to individual shifting and also feeding on children, of which one of the texts that I'm going to go into speaks about that in a little bit more detail. And so it doesn't benefit her in any kind of way. And all the other Illuminati insiders that go public with this kind of information, it's so bizarre and so far out that those most normal people aren't going to believe them anyways. And so that's the other reason why I think there's a relevance to it, in that, again, with my research focus on the biblical text and the mention of these kind of beings, that it's just too bizarre to believe as truth, but that's what we are dealing with as world.
Okay, I want to make a suggestion. Let's worry about this phone thing after the show. But if we can go with this, we can work. I'll stay with you. And they can call in on my number, which is 702 605 4436. 702 605 4436. I'll stay with you, and I should be able to. The caller should be able to call in. I'll accept the call, and we can get some input tonight, Zen. Okay?
All right. No problem. I appreciate that, Jerry. And we'll get this phone situation wrapped up later. All right. We have a question from the chat room from Zippy as to who are these star people. And that's a very relevant question. And what do they do? Well, basically, the star people are the rebel angels. These dragon-like beings that I'm talking about, the seraphim angels that were cast out with Lucifer, the 1/3 of the angels of the Most High that joined him in rebellion and in early war against the forces of light, that they were cast out of the heavens on the second day, according to the book of the Secrets of Enoch. And that from the second to the sixth day they have been present here upon the earth before the modern creation of humanity by Yahweh Elohim, or the Most High God. And that these particular beings, the main thing that they are doing is that they are establishing the whole premise of their being gods, and that they have been trying to enslave the pre-Adamic races and also the race in modern humanity now that we are upon the scene. And so that's where their focus has been. And they've also been trying to establish religions and ritual that would feed them psychically and also in the phenomena of blood, because they feast on fear and they feast on blood, which this is also spoken about in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, of which the article that I'm going to first relate, which talks about an old city being discovered under Los Angeles, and that speaks about the lizard people, the presence of the lizard people. And I'll post the article, a link to the article in the chat room. That this is very, very ancient. And again, these beings were here before us, and that throughout the mythologies of the world, we have knowledge of their presence. Even Krita Mutwa, who did a whole series on the reptilian presence with David Icke, that he mentions and calls them the Chitauri or the Chitauli, and that the Hindi people, or the the people of India, they call them the Nagas. The Native Americans call them the rattlesnake people, or the Kachinahe. And all, other people call them different things. And so anyways, the mythology, even these deep underground bases, in the testimony of Phil Schneider, which is another piece of evidence we'll go into very soon, he talks about how the deep underground bases were built on top of already existent alien structures, and that there were deeper underground bases found in different parts of the world. Even there's in Turkey, there's a place called Derinkuyu that has many, many deep, not even deep underground bases, but just underground cities that are abandoned, that were built with such precision that they can still be used today, and that get fresh air at 5 stories deep underground. That they work on ventilation systems and technologies that are just mind-blowing, and that can't be replicated even today. And so these kind of places exist and have been in existence. The Emerald Tablets also speak about them. These structures being built by the so-called Atlanteans, the Atlantean priest kings, and that even the pyramids are talked about as being constructed by these particular beings. And that the megalithic structures that we find worldwide that we can't explain or can't replicate even to this day, that those things were done. And they're confirmation because they're older than 6,000 years old. They're just further confirmation as to how ancient our earth is, and also to how the rebel angels were here before we were. Even things like the Sumerian kings list, or the king list proposed by Berosus. They talk about the how the first kings that ruled, the so-called demigods, how they ruled for thousands of years, and that the first one ruled for a longer period of time than all of the others that came after him. And so the longevity of the people has decreased since the first reigns of the first demigod kings. And then there's the talk the Egyptians speak about Zep Tepe or Tep Zepe the first times, and how this was a period of time when the fallen angels, the rebel angels, ruled before we were even on the earth, before we were even created. And so all of these things are just further confirmation as to what I am talking about. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go into this article. I'm not going to read the entirety of it, but it's interesting to say the least. It says this, and this was put out January 29th of 1934 by the LA Times. Gene Bosket, he wrote this. It says, busy Los Angeles, although little realizing it in the hustle and bustle of modern existence, stands above a lost city of catacombs filled with incalculable treasure and imperishable records of a race of humans further advanced intellectually and scientifically than even the highest type of present-day peoples. In the belief of G. Warren Schuffelt, geophysical engineer now engaged in an attempt to wrest from the lost city deep in the earth below Fort Mill Hill the secrets of the lizard people of legendary fame in the medicine lodges of the American Indian. So firmly does Schuffelt and a little staff of assistants believe that a maze of catacombs and priceless golden tablets are to be found beneath downtown Los Angeles that the engineer and his aides have already driven a shaft 250 feet into the ground, the mouth of the shaft being on the old Banning property of North Hill Street, overlooking Sunset Boulevard, Spring Street, and North Broadway. All right. Schuffelt learned of the legend of the lizard people after his x-ray had led him hither and yon over an area extending from the public library on West 5th Street to Southwest Museum on Museum Drive at the foot of Mount Washington. Quote, I knew I was over a pattern of tunnels, the engineer explained yesterday, and I had mapped out the course of the tunnels, the position of large rooms scattered along the tunnel route, as well as the position of deposits of gold, but I couldn't understand the meaning of it. According to the legend as imparted to Schuffelt by Macklin, the radio X-ray has revealed the location of one of 3 lost cities on the Pacific coast, the local one having been dug by the lizard people after the Great Catastrophe, which occurred about 5,000 years ago. This legendary catastrophe was in the form of a huge tongue of fire which came out of the southwest, destroying all life in its path. The path being several hundred miles wide, the city underground was dug as a means of escaping future fires. The lost city, dug with powerful chemicals by the lizard people instead of pick and shovel, was drained into the ocean where its tunnels began, according to the legend. Skip just a little bit. Large rooms in the domes of the hills above the city of Labyrinths housed 1,000 families in the manner of tall buildings, and imperishable food supplies of the herb variety were stored in the catacombs to provide sustenance for the lizard folk for great lengths of time as the next fire swept over the earth. All right, I'm going to skip a little bit more. It says that the city was laid out like a giant lizard. The key room is the directory to all parts of the city and to all recorded tablets. The legend states all records were kept on gold tablets 4 feet long and 14 inches wide. On these tablets of gold, gold having been the symbol of life to the legendary lizard people, will be found the recorded history of the Mayans. One particular tablet, the southwest corner of which will be missing, is to be found the record of the origin of the human race. All right, hold on. Sheffield stated that his x-ray took pictures of 37 such tablets, all of which had the southwest corners cut off. The lizard people, according to Macklin, were of a much higher type intellectually than modern human beings. The intellectual accomplishments of their 9-year-old children were the equal of those of present-day college graduates. So greatly advanced scientifically were these people that in addition to perfecting a chemical solution by which they bored underground without removing earth and rock, they also developed a cement far stronger and better than any in use in modern times, with they line their tunnels and rooms. All right. Macklin said legendary advice to American Indians was to seek the lost city in an area within a chain of hills forming the frog or a horse's hoofs. I'm going to skip just a little bit more. We're going to get to what the all right, last thing here, and then we'll go into another article. An amazing labyrinth of underground passages and caverns hundreds of feet below the surface of Fort Moore Hill is revealed in maps, all rights to which have been reserved, prepared by G. Warren Sheffield, local mining engineer, who explains his topographical endeavors as being based on results obtained from a radio X-ray perfected by him in this elaborate system of tunnels and rooms, according to a legend furnished Sheffield by an American Indian authority. A tribe of human beings called the lizard people lived 5,000 years ago. The network of tunnels formed what Indians call the Lost Lizard City, according to Sheffield, and the legend. Gold tablets on which are written the origin of the human race and other priceless documents are to be found in the tunnels, according to the legend. We'll be right back, and we'll get in deeper into this.
Rise.
Take a look around, kid. What do you see? Homes being foreclosed. People working 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table and still drowning in debt. Don't get me wrong. This country was founded on great ideals and principles. They've all been ruined by the banks. Open your eyes to banks that are robbing you. You know who my favorite president was? Oh, Thomas Jefferson. Because he saw all of this coming and tried to stop it. He fought the banks. JFK too, and they killed him for it. The banking institution is more dangerous than an army, he said. He also said that every generation needs a revolution, Jimmy. The American dream is just that. Just a dream. War is a continuation of politics, only by other means. Politics is a continuation of economics by other means. This is our bank. This is our war. And this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio.
All right, welcome back, everybody. And just wanted to remind everybody that we are the largest listener-supported, commercial-free, and corporate-free entity and radio network, all available on the internet and on the planet as a whole. And so if you appreciate us, please do what you can to support us monetarily so that we can keep coming to you in the ways that we do. And of course, you can, purchase those CDs of your favorite host. I believe they're like $30, but you'll get all of the programs from the beginning of the year to the end of year last year. And also, another great way to support us and to gain access to all of the shows from all of the various hosts is to subscribe monthly. It's only like $4.95 to access all of the archives. And again, you can download all of the shows that you can for all of the various hosts and any that you might have been interested in, but you couldn't, get on while they were live. A great way to do it. Download it to your MP3 or your iPad or iPod, or, and then play it as you're driving. Because I know a lot of you spend a lot of time on the road, and that if you're listening to radio, you're spending about 30% of your time listening to, listening to just commercials, which is absolutely annoying and a waste of time. All right, I'm going to go back into the material because I wanted to cover this information, and I run out of time so fast, but there's so much, and I know I won't be able to get to it all, so I'll do a follow-up, and hopefully we'll have the phone setup figured out so that y'all can call in and interact. I had covered a long time ago when I was talking about this as a topic about the Chilean mine disaster. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's when those group of miners in Chile, I believe there was 33 of them, they were trapped underground for a long period of time. This happened back in March of 2012. Well, there was a whole other side of that event that was not televised or spoken of by mainstream sources, but that is interesting, connected to what we are talking about here as far as the rebel angels, the prior times, these deep underground bases, the connections with this particular, the Nagas or the Nakash, the Shining Ones, the Seraphim, Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them. These particular beings that seem to live in the interiors of the earth, and that many of the UFOs, they enter into the interior of the earth. Some go in by, through volcanoes. Some enter into lakes or into oceans, and that there are supposed deep underwater or underground bases, and that there are openings, huge hole-like structures in Mexico or Central or South America that are supposedly also portals, entryways into these deep underground bases. And so if we have time, I've got a testimony I'd like to share which confirms that as well. But I'm not going to tell you the basic, just I'm going to speak about the cover story of this Chilean mine disaster, because for those that have not heard this, it's absolutely fascinating. It's totally connected to this as we're talking about. I'm going to post a link to the article, so if you want to read the foreground material, which I won't be covering in this show, please read it and study it for yourself. And then We'll go into it. All right, there's the link. Here's the story. And I'm going to try to move as fast as I can because I've got so much material to cover. The official account states that the other miners were in general good health except for scratch, gouge, puncture, and slash wounds resulting from the cave-in and attempts to dig out. U.S. defense contractors, heavily armed, discreetly guarded a mini compound occupied by U.S. interests inside the tent city that sprang up around the mining site. Stranger is the fact that immediately after Lost 33, the name given to the miners translating as the 33, a team of NASA scientists entered the tunnel system escorted by armed defense contractors and what appeared to be Special Forces team. Eyewitnesses reported. A perimeter was then secured around the entrance as a fence was erected, preventing further visual observation. It has also been reported that this team of scientists has security provided by defense contractors, special operations operatives, and it is quite possible that this team of NASA scientists is the very team sighted entering the San Jose mine after Lost 33 was rescued. But why? While NASA has publicly admitted to exploring the caves of the Atacama Desert to conduct, quote, Martian research, end quote, their subterranean forays might have a classified mission attached to them as well. A defense contractor for security who wishes to remain anonymous to retain his or her position has stated that NASA is looking for alien life on our own planet. The life may or may not be indigenous to Earth, but certainly lives here deep in major cavern systems, said the contractor. Quote, for years, NASA has had reports of reptoids or reptilian humanoids. Something happened and they decided to begin investigating. Why in the Atacama? I don't know. He or she continued, but we found things, remains of weird shredded animals, malted skin or something, and there was a brief firefight after one of our own contractors went missing. The strange thing about his disappearance was all the blood and then reading that he had been killed in Afghanistan 4 months later. NASA officially ended their Atacama exploration in 2010, perhaps with the events leading up to the Chilean mining disaster in mind. The friends of Lost 33 tell a chilling tale that is far different from the official account provided by mainstream media outlets. According to people close to Lost 33, friends, family, and some who simply overheard the story circulating around, the incident was no simple cave-in. This accounting has been pieced together from various conversations, emails, and written letters. Apparently, while searching for the source of a vein of gold, one of the mining detachments blasted through a wall of rock and discovered an enormous natural cavern on the other side, whose walls shined with over a dozen thick veins of gold and other precious metals. The detachment members were quite happy, and some of the men broke protocol by charging into the room to pickaxe gold nuggets. Word spread quickly like bad air. Someone said, soon dozens of miners were all over the cavern entrance picking at the gold, making lots of noise and ignoring their jobs. As the detachment leader tried to wrangle the men back into the mine, a small group of men explored farther into the cavern. Soon things quieted down a bit as miners focused on picking at the gold veins. Everyone was happy, a miner's relative stated, until they heard screams coming from across the cavern. Most of the miners were spooked and ran back into the mines except for the detachment leader who had ordered men from his team to come with him to help the screaming men. By the time they got to the location of the screaming, it was too late. They found 4 or 5 men. It was hard to tell who was who and if all the parts were still there, in pools of splattered blood. It was a gory mess, said someone. One of the detachment crew had gotten blood all over himself, having slipped on a puddle of it. He lost his wits trying to wipe the blood and gore from his face with a fresh handkerchief, later confiscated by NASA for DNA testing. As they tried to calm him down, the detachment heard hissing and crackling like nails or claws making way across wet stone. The team called for help on their walkie-talkies and immediately left the cave, running for their lives. Having made their way through the blast hole, they realized that 2 of them were missing. More screams echoed from the cavern, these more blood-curdling than the first set. The detachment leader made a decision as he saw bloody walking lizards coming for the blast hole. He ordered the hole blasted shut immediately and set 3 crews to work. In a frantic rush, they rigged explosives as the reptoids advanced, still chewing on the remains of the doomed miners who had ventured too far. 1 or 2 reptoids made it through the initial blast hole as crews rolled wire down the tunnel so as not to be caught in the blast. Reptoids now in the mining tunnels began to kill anyone foolish enough to challenge them with handheld powered mining equipment. Finally, the explosives were ready and the detachment leader ordered the blast. The explosion resulted in a cave-in of sorts, sealing the original blast hole under tons of rock. However, an untold number of the reptilian fiends was loose in their tunnels. Most, they hoped, had been killed in the blast, but no one was certain how many, if any, were remaining. More screaming told them that at least one was still lurking. At this point, the miners believed they were about 44 survivors in the area. After fighting with the reptoid in the dark for a few hours of hide and seek and having many more deaths, the remaining 33 took shelter in a protected area built for cave-ins. The area also prevented the reptoid from entering. Here they remained in horror and shock for the next 17 days as more cave-ins happened around them, unsure whether they were caused by the reptoid trying to dig in or out from blast damage. Many of the lost 33 have developed herpetophobia, fear of lizards and reptiles, since their ordeal. With the above account in mind, one might wonder about the true nature of NASA's ventures into the caverns of the Atacama Desert. Why bring heavily armed defense contractors and special operations forces on a specific jaunt into the Underdark? Perhaps it is because NASA and our government know something about what's down there than they are letting us in on. For decades, there have been reports of special operations teams, including British SAS, exploring caves around the world, specifically in Central and South America, and now NASA is involved. Could there be alien life, or at least unknown life, beneath our feet? For now, it seems that NASA is in some kind of confrontation with the subterranean reptilian entities. All right. I did post a link to the full article if you want to read the other part of it, but that was the meat of it. And so you can see how, how bizarre what we are dealing with as world, and how and why they don't want to make this public. They'd have everybody freaking out. But that's still no reason for them to be hiding the truth in the way that they are. Well, we know that the forces, the powers that be, that control the media, that they are working in tangent with these particular entities, and that is the most relevant reason for the cover-up. And that, the governments of the world have been also, they have signed treaties to allow the abduction of a certain amount of individuals in trade for certain technologies. And that some of these deep underground bases, that this is where the interaction, the technology coming to light, the things that are spoken about in the Dulce underground bases by whistleblowers like Thomas Costello, other individuals. I mean, it's just bizarre what's happening in the world, and that we're not privy to. All right. I'm going to continue on because I know I'm running out of time. What I'm now about to cover is some of the testimony of Phil Schneider, who also came out and warned us about and told us about these deep underground bases, and also that that he was involved in working as a contractor for the U.S. government in the construction of these deep underground bases. And he spoke about how they were building bases already on top of other existing alien structures, and that these particular structures were very, very ancient. There's also the account of New Schwabenland and the Nazis being involved in the construction of a base in Antarctica, and that the stories that have come to light about that underground base is that when they built into and tunneled and created these large cavities, that they eventually joined their base with an already existent underground polar base that was alien and that had been priorly constructed. And so similar kind of thing. All right. Some of the testimony of Phil Schneider. And I'm not going to cover this in fullness because he does talk a lot about the New World Order and, the hierarchy of the New Order and that kind of thing. But I'm going to just focus on the connections with the Nakash and the presence of these particular beings. I am going to give you some general information, but mostly I'm going to try to focus on these particular beings. Quote, they have been building these 129 bases day and night unceasingly since the early 1940s. Some of them were built even earlier than that. These bases are basically large cities underground connected by high-speed magneto-leviton trains and that have speeds up to Mach 2. Several books have been written about this activity. Al Bielek has my only copy of one of them. Richard Sauter, a PhD architect, and lives his life by talking about this. He worked with a number of government agencies on deep underground military bases in and around where you live in Idaho. There are 11 of them. The average depth of these bases is over a mile, and they, again, are basically whole cities underground. They are all between 2.66 and 4.25 cubic miles in size. They have laser drilling machines that can drill a tunnel 7 miles long in one day. The Black Project sidestepped the authority of Congress, which, as we know, is illegal. But right now, the New World Order is depending on these bases. If I had known at the time I was working on them that the New World Order was involved, I would not have done it. I was lied to rather extensively. All right. Firefight at Dulce. Back in 1954, under the Eisenhower administration, the federal government decided to circumvent the Constitution of the United States and form a treaty with alien entities. It was called the 1954 Greada Treaty, which basically made the agreement that the aliens involved could take a few cows and test their implanting techniques on a few human beings, but that they had to give details about the people involved. Slowly, the aliens altered the bargain until they decided they wouldn't abide by it at all. Back in 1979, this was the reality, and the firefight at Dulce occurred quite by accident. I was involved in the building of an addition to the deep underground military base at Dulce, which is probably the deepest base. It goes down 7 levels and over 2.5 miles deep. At that particular time, we had drilled 4 distinct holes in the desert, and we were going to link them together and blow out large sections at a time. My job was to go down the holes and check the rock samples and recommend the explosive to deal with that particular type of rock. As I was headed down there, we found ourselves amidst a large cavern that was full of outer space or inner space aliens, otherwise known as large grays. I shot 2 of them. At that time, there were 30 people down there. About 40 or more came down after this started, and all of them got killed. We had surprised the whole underground base of existing aliens. Later, we found out that they had been living on or in our planet for a very long time. This could explain a lot of what is behind the theory of ancient astronauts. All right. A note. This report seems to reveal a limited perspective on the overall Dulce war conflicts based on the experience of one individual. It appears, however, as if there was much more involved in the overall scenario than what Phil Snyder describes. For instance, from Phil's description, it appears as if his team broke into the base accidentally. It could be that in response to the captured scientists mentioned by Thomas Edwin Costello and others, the special forces and the intel agents intentionally attempted to break into the underground alien bases through a back door, so to speak, yet Snyder may not have been aware of this part of it. Other reports would suggest that the conflict was more complex than this and involved more than one firefight. According to other sources, the Dulce Wars involved at least 100 highly trained special forces from Branton, the Dulce Wars. Anyway, Phil Snez. I got shot in the chest with one of their weapons, which was the box on their body, that blew a hole in me and gave me a nasty dose of cobalt radiation. I have had cancer because of that. All right. Let me skip just a little bit more. All right, we'll be right back for final segment. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen, and today we're covering the Anunnaki, the dragons, the dragon lords, and their connection to the Nakash of Genesis chapter 3. Whoever just called me directly, I could not answer your call because if you were trying to call in and ask a question, I do not have the server, and so I can't patch you in that way. And so you would have to call a different number.
You want to? Did you get that number? I'll see if I can bring him.
Yeah, if you would, if you'll provide that number, that would.
Let's see what I can do here, Zen. Okay, well, I will try to call it for them if they hang up. Go ahead, continue. I put a question in your chat for you, Zen, if you can get it. Thank you.
All right, if y'all have access to the chat room, that's the number you're going to have to call in order to contact the show. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to answer you that way. All right, let's continue with, because we only got a certain amount of time. Let me continue here. All right, this has to do with some of the secret technologies. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to find my place. I'm going to just pick it up right here. All right. All right. If Phil is right. Oh. Well, anyways, this is a different. This is a AC. If Phil is right, and all this hooks up to the deep underground base that he was offered the plans to build back in 1979, and that was this other man told me in private that there is a lot of human slave labor in these deep underground bases being used by these aliens, and that a lot of this slave labor is children. He said that when the children reach the point that they are unable to work anymore, they are slaughtered on the spot and consumed. Consumed by who? Aliens. Again, this is not from me, but from a man that gave his life to get this information out. He worked down there for close to 20 years and he knew everything that was going on. Who do these aliens eat? They specifically like young human children that haven't been contaminated like adults. Well, there is a gentleman out giving a lot of information from a source he gets it from, and he says that there is an incredible number of children snatched in this country, over 200,000 each year, and that these children are the main entree for dinner. Many will read this and scoff in utter disbelief. Hold on. I got all these people calling in, and I just lost my place. Hold on. 1 second.
Which number are they calling on then? They calling your cell?
They're just calling me directly.
Oh, okay. I copy.
All right. I'm almost there. I apologize.
You're all right. I hope you guys are enjoying Zen's show. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Donations are welcome in the chat room. Thank you.
All right, here we go. We'll pick it up. It is interesting. Yes, if you have the drop on them, they die just like everyone. Oh, wait. I have to get to this other part. All right. On those ships were the Germans and Americans. Where did they have any kind of insignia on their uniforms? Yes, they did, and I've been told that the organization is called the Black League, possibly the Black Monks within the NSA, who reportedly interact directly with aliens. By people that might know, a blue triangle with a red-eyed dragon or red-eyed black dragon with a circle around it. It was very unusual. There's another woman that has written a book about an encounter she had in Fort Walden. I met her some years back, and we were talking about things we've seen. She also talked about this strange insignia. She and I both sat down and drew what we saw, and they were virtually carbon copies of each other. Winged serpent symbols have been observed by several abductees, including policeman Herbert Shermer, who reported the insignia on the uniforms of the reptilian-eyed greys that had abducted him, which to me, that's just further confirmation as to the connections of these so-called aliens or these ancient aliens, which are nothing more than the rebel angels that are connected to the feathered serpent, the Nakash of Genesis chapter 3. And so, all right. In the book Cosmic Conflict, the author talks about the ancient city that was uncovered by the Germans before World War II and tells about their effort to revive some frozen humans they found in this underground city, and that the true humans couldn't be revived. But the ones that could be revived were in fact reptilian in disguise. And the reptilians have the capability to do shape-shifting and create a laser holographic image. So when you look at them, you see a human, but under that there is a non-human there. It's like a deja vu of the movie They Live. An early newsletter called The Crystal Ball published information along this line, which stated that the Soviets had, during the investigation of a meteor crash, uncovered a buried city in Siberia where they discovered the frozen bodies of both humans who could not be revived and humans appearing reptilian, who were revived from the frozen state. Allegedly, the reptilians reanimated and killed the Soviet scientists, and through some type of psychic osmosis drained their minds and assimilated their memories and features through a molecular shapeshifting type of process. John Carpenter, who directed They Live, also directed an earlier movie called The Thing, which was based somewhat on a similar theme. The alien imposters then called for backup, and more scientists came out and were replaced, and these eventually returned to Russia and began to infiltrate the communist government. Although such claims may seem preposterous, it is nevertheless interesting how numerous preposterous claims as this contain identical reptilian themes. Aside from the instinctive and basic racial fear in humans of things reptilian, could this reoccurring theme be more than mere coincidence? Kathy O'Brien, who wrote Transformation in America, revealed that George Bush projected a hologram that he was a reptilian. Real crazy stuff, but if this technology that they possess is there, why couldn't a race do something like that? These people that are working with our government. See, I believe that, but I do believe that these are demons that manifest themselves as alien beings, and that this has been going on for a long time. Demons? What demons? The fallen angels. The reptilians look like that anyway. All the scriptures around the planet talk about serpent beings, or in the case of Judeo-Christian scriptures like Genesis chapter 3 and Revelation chapter 12, serpents being possessed by demons, or through which demons are able or allowed to incarnate. Exactly what we're talking about here. What do you think, Alex? Well, I think that's pretty much what the bottom line is. Also, they talk about the rapture. It could be like an alien Thanksgiving. These people that have done all this research and are part of the underground government are telling that the humans on this planet have been at war with these reptilian aliens for thousands of years. At one point, things got so hot on the planet, like it is now, aliens took on this holographic image and infiltrated the human race in order to take it over and undermine it, just like this New World Order is doing right now. They're saying that the same thing happened to civilization on Earth before, and that the humans before actually had the capability for interplanetary travel, and that it was so bad here with the reptilians that they had to leave. What they are also saying is that these beings that are human looking, that are visiting our planet at this time, trying to inform people what is going on and guide them, are actually our ancestors that escaped from Earth before, when it was under reptilian domination. Pretty interesting stuff, huh? All right, let me skip to another part. All right. C. Do these reptilians bleed if they get shot? DA. Has anybody ever killed one? AC. Phil Schneider did. He killed several of them when he was involved in cutting some tunnels at Dulce. He was lowered down a shaft and ended up in a nest of these things. He and some of his team were in there, and some of the Delta Force came in. They had a shootout with these aliens, and he killed a couple of them before they got a round off and shot him with some sort of laser weapon. He used to pull his shirt up and show me where they darn near blew a hole in his chest with whatever kind of laser weapon they were using. DA, so they can be killed then. AC. Yes, if you have the drop on them, they die just like everyone else. They consist of mass just like we do. C. It is interesting that high officials in the Clinton administration, like Cisneros, were deeply involved with the construction of this airport. Also, that Pat Schroepy, all of a sudden, she's leaving office. It's like a lot of people who have been involved with this airport are leaving town. Also, there is a fellow by the name of Rodney Stitch who writes about the total corruption in the Denver area. Does this tie in with what you were talking about? AC. Well, he is the one that wrote the book Defrauding America. He said that they had a tape of a CIA agent paying off the mayor of Denver to get the airport built. There is just so much corruption. They are selling the good American people out, and we have some of our own people selling the rest of the population out for a few pieces of gold. All right, 1 second. All right, we got enough time. We'll take a call. All right, hold on. He's connecting with us. What's up, Jacker?
Hey, Zen, how am I coming through?
Sweet.
You sound good, brother.
Okay, only 40 seconds. That's all I need, Zen. Listen.
No worries, brother. Take your time. It's been a long time. I've been trying to contact you anyway, so good to hear from you.
Yeah, I kind of wiped everybody out of my Skype, Zen, and just kind of pulled back for a while. But listen, Zen.
Yeah, brother.
This is a must. You got to see this. I mean, this is like 2 thumbs up, plus both hands.
Right.
You got to see Jupiter Ascending.
Somebody had told me about that it's connection to the things that I've been talking about for years.
It's the same guy who did The Matrix, those brothers. I mean, you got reptilians in there, you got shapeshifters, you got crop circles, you got abduction, you got grays, you got the political construct of the universe, you got ancient civilizations. And it's all within a story where we think we're the only ones on this planet, and they make it so real, Zen, so high tech, that it's going to blow your mind. It is good. I've already seen it twice. I'm going to see it again.
I'll definitely check it out. You know, I had heard, because my son went to see it with his wife, and they didn't expect anything good because there's so many bad reviews out on it. But very interesting.
Bad reviews, and it's just like it's like somebody took your book. Well, I mean, winged reptilians, the serpents, the whole works. They took your book, and it's mind expanding. That's all I can say.
Jacker, where can we see that movie?
It's in the theaters now, and you need to see it on the big screen because they dumped a lot of money in that thing. I mean, they dumped a lot of big ideas. I mean, it starts off slow. But after about 15 minutes, man, it just starts hitting on all cylinders. And it's like you're watching the movie of what Zen's talking about the Nakash, the structure of the universe, as far as it being really old and ancient. When you look at it, New Agers are going to love it because they're going to think that's the way the universe is set up. But if you can look at it through that it's actually Lucifer, I'm not going to give any of it away, but you'll see, Zen.
One question: does it relate any of Hitler and Antarctica?
Oh no, it's so mind expanding. It's bigger than that. It's mind expanding. That's all I can say is that you will be a different person. It's one of those movies, like The Matrix or The Avatar or like Dune. Right. It will expand your mind like that. In fact, once you see that movie, next time you tune into Zen, you're going to say, well, of course, that's the way everything works. Yeah, I saw the movie. So, okay, Zen, well, I just wanted to jump in here. I know you only got a few minutes, so just wanted to give you the heads up on that.
Well, hey, I appreciate that, Jacker, and definitely get in touch with me soon, brother, and let's chat.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Jared, for taking my call. You all take care.
Bro. I love you.
Yeah, take care.
God bless you, brother. Love you, man.
God bless.
Peace. All right. Yeah. My son told me that the same kind of thing, that this book, this movie was similar to the information that I've been talking about on the Nakash and the ancient dragon, and how all of the pagan religions worldwide, how they had all been involved in the worship of the feathered serpent, and that nobody had put it together as far as what the Nakash was. And even though it makes mention of the Nakash and even translates it in the King James version of the Bible as a serpent, nobody still was connecting all of the worship of the feathered serpent, the winged dragon, or the winged snake, the guardian of the tree of the knowledge, together with all of this other information that was coming to light. And it wasn't until I received the information on the text of the book of Atum and Ua, the Thracian text, that very ancient text, of which, just so you know, I did try to invite Dr. Stephen Guy, the guy that had decrypted the Thracian language and that had proved that ancient hieroglyphics, the Egyptian hieroglyphics, were based upon the Thracian script, to come on and do a show with us, because he lives here or had lived in California. But I was informed that he had died of what they say were natural causes, but his brother believes that he was poisoned. And he was still young, and he was a very healthy individual, but it's my opinion that he was murdered in order to cover up the information that he was bringing out on the Thracians as being ancient Christians, and that they knew about and even had prophesied about the coming of Christ, and how they predated and preceded even the pagan religions, as far as the Egyptians and their worship of a pantheon of gods and goddesses, and also the Sumerians and their, how they believe in the Anunnaki, and how they attribute, and how even the Sumerian texts try to establish the premise, as does the Ancient Alien series, that the fallen angels, the rebel angels, are the creators of humanity. When all of that, if you read my book, Sons of God, I explain the differences and what they were trying to do. How they had tried to make a slave race out of the pre-Adamic human that was here. And also, once we arrived on the scene, once we were created by Yahweh Elohim, the Most High God, and that we were made in the image of the Father and the Son, and that, we had special capacity, that we were even wiser and of much higher created intelligence than the rebel angels, the forms that they were clothed in, the reptilian form, and that they were jealous of us, and that they wanted to then focus on enslaving us as a people and as a creature, and that they were also trying to and attempting to mate with us and to interject themselves into our DNA gene pool, and that the serpent, the Nakash, was successful in creating a hybrid race, the Cainites, through Cain, and that the children of Cain, that they were somehow, they had a prevalence for evil. They were inclined towards being murderers, liars, and deceivers, much like Cain was. and the whole connections to what happened in the garden, and also with what's going to happen at the end times, with the harvest, the separation of the wheat and the tares, all is connected. God bless all. We'll pick up next week. I've got a few more things I want to say about this. God bless all. Good night.